Hello and welcome to Auto Arcadia. I am your host Thomas Hope, and with me is
Colin Wood, the other host.
Hi Colin. You doing all right today?
I'm not too bad, man. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. I have a subject on my mind today, and that is what do our cars say about us? And
Ooh.
it's a big question, I think. And what I want to explore today, because I suspect there might be more to this, is kind of the stereotypes that surround particular cars and broader, more kind of types of car manufacturer as well. We can probably touch on.
Yeah. There's a lot of meat in this on these bones, bud, I would say.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's influenced by like a lot of stuff, but media is quite a big one, and there's a lot of it, and there's a lot to talk about there. So that's one of the things I'd definitely like to cover in the episode. But I think the good place to start is really to talk about what we mean by car stereotypes and maybe give some examples. And I have a feeling you will have some examples of car stereotypes.
Oh, yeah.
So do you want to take the floor? You want to run with some?
Yeah, so right off the bat, big 4x4s driven by men with small penises and or Karens.
I think that big 4x4s, I would be more surprised to see a man driving a large 4x4. No. They seem to have like quite a female dominated market, but also it depends if you consider kind of big crossover SUVs, large 4x4s as well, because they might not even be 4x4s, but that big size of vehicle.
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning more, like the big ass Ford Rangers. Like, I think they're a Raptor.
Oh yeah, no, they're giant. Yeah, no, they do scream small dick energy.
Yeah, I mean, I know we do have people in America that listen, so I have to say, like, our big Ford Raptor is not big compared to like some of the Dodge Rams and stuff that's kicking about over there. But in the UK, that's colossal.
Yeah, and I think it's slightly culturally different in the US as well, because people
Yeah,
actually use their pickup trucks for like work and stuff. It's got a much more blue collar image than in the UK. The UK is just not really set up for big American trucks. I bet they're really practical, but I bet they're also a fucking nightmare to like store and put anywhere and get to like narrow sites and stuff like that. Whereas, if you see a pickup on the road, your chances are you're going to see like a Mitsubishi L200 or something of that kind of size, like a mid-size pickup, not a large one that the Raptor kind of is. I mean, they're absolutely massive.
oh yeah. I mean, for a little bit of context here, actually, for listeners in other countries, when we say big, we're talking like Toyota Land Cruiser is presenting problems getting parked and stuff. So that like gives people a pretty good idea, because the Land Cruiser is pretty universal. Whether you're listening in Dubai or America, you'll know what a Land Cruiser is and how big they are.
Yeah.
Like that has issues getting parked in most places in the UK. So when you have something like a Ford Raptor, yeah, it's just
I could totally see the point of having something like that if you needed it and you had like a farm or something like that, and it was basically the farm pickup.
yeah,
The issue is like, what happens if you have to drive the farm pickup into town and you go, like the tiny little market town, and everything's really narrow and it's just a bit of a faff. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like you can live with a cumbersome vehicle, but most people don't really want that kind of inconvenience all the time. That's why like smaller pickups have been more popular.
yeah. Like I haven't had my 90s Toyotas. They're as big as I would reasonably want to go. Like S-Class Mercedes, anything bigger than that is a waste of time. Like you're just getting into having a difficult time daily.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm not a massive fan of big cars. It's fun to drive like the big battleship boat, but then when you actually have to like get anywhere in it, it just becomes like, oh, that's quite a small gap. Oh, that's narrow. Oh, that's a little bit tight. I better do this slower. Whereas, it's stuff you wouldn't even think about if you're in a smaller car.
Yeah. But I mean, smaller cars have stereotypes too, for example. So like your Saabs and Volvos driven by architects and dentists.
Yes, the kind of the safe Swedish bricks.
Yeah. definitely. Although I
driven by
have to
quite
say,
boring people
this
who are
is
a bit
where,
weird.
yeah, definitely. And then, for example, the Corsa. In the
Yes.
UK, kind of synonymous with people that rally around in McDonald's car parks with underage girlfriends. There's not really any getting away from that one, I'm afraid. The Prius, hippies and tree huggers.
I would say so, yeah. Or people who wanted at one point to virtue signal environmental consciousness.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like celebrities are a big one with Priuses. Like
Mhm.
always
That's what I
parked in
was
a garage
thinking.
right next door to a Veyron with like a 16-litre engine.
Yeah.
Um,
There was a period in time when you kind of had to have one if you were like scrutinized because like they were the eco thing to do.
yeah, which is crazy because the eco thing to do would have been not buying a new car.
Aye. It
But
would,
yeah.
yeah, 100%, yes.
And then there's my personal favourite, which is Mitsubishi Evos and Suzuki? No, Subaru, Colin. Subaru Imprezas are driven by yobs, which I don't, I totally get the whole idea behind it, but I think it's a bit misplaced. But yeah, so I have some pretty strong feelings on car stereotypes, and while those are like the main ones, I don't necessarily agree with them all either.
Yeah, I found it interesting at the end that you said that you didn't really feel that the Subaru Impreza drivers and Evo drivers are yobs. You didn't really agree with that one because we will have to talk about that as well, which is whether these stereotypes are actually kind of, are they founded or are they just kind of like, are they a bit outdated?
Yeah,
But I think there's some other ones, I think a classic stereotype for a very specific car is the VW bus. Like the kind of the Type 2, I think. That's like got a really strong image it had a really strong image of being like a hippie bus from like the 60s and 70s, but now they're actually kind of collector's items and like there's a lot of like kind of younger people, kind of like maybe hipsters buying these to like kind of capture a little bit of that nostalgic vibe that's associated with them because of the hippie movement.
yeah, man, absolutely. And like, yeah, because it was the quintessential '60s free love, ban the bomb, flowery hippie machine, wasn't it? Really?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's been immortalized in loads of media as that.
Oh yeah, like it's as soon as you think VW split wagon bus, it's like hippies.
Yeah, you absolutely think of that. There are some cars that have like very, very strong associations thanks to media as well. Like, for example, the Crown Vic. When you think of the Crown Vic, you think of a service vehicle, don't you? It's
Yeah,
a police car, it's a taxi.
FBI. Yeah,
Yeah, like it could be a government car, and that's quite strongly associated with that. I'm not sure how many people actually just bought Crown Vics as their own like kind of potter and about car.
yeah. Do you know this is actually a thing? Like, because the Crown Vic was kind of around when American cars weren't all that really. Like they weren't like you had like big 7-liter engines that were making 110 brake horsepower.
Yes, yeah, it was in one of the lower power periods for American automotive production. Like,
But the Crown Vic is actually supposed to be a relatively decent platform, if what I've heard is to be true, which is actually quite surprising. Well, it is and it isn't, because the police either tend to pick quite a capable car or an absolute shed for what they use.
the way the police procure cars in the UK might actually be worth talking about for an episode because there's some wild stuff out there on UK roads.
Oh, yeah, aerial atom, for example, but we'll cover that on another day.
Yeah, I think that's for another day. But yeah, so these cars they have quite strong associations, and certain manufacturers do too. Kind of like Mercedes is quite luxurious, like very luxury coded.
Yeah, definitely. There's no argument on that one. Like they had a reputation as well for being quite insightful. Like it was always, if you want to know what cars in the future are going to have, look at what a Mercedes S Class has now, sort of thing.
Yeah, they were a technological leader.
Yeah, like with the night vision, for example.
That's exactly what I was thinking, was the night vision kind of display. And did they not do like the kind of the technology that matches the speed to the car in front?
Adaptive cruise control.
Aye, thank you.
That's the one.
That's the correct name for what I tried to pull out there.
Yeah. No, they were very, very tech leader, and also absolute luxury. And always for me were like gangster cars.
They do have maybe a little bit of a bad guy vibe to them.
Yeah, like a big S class in black, like an S500 or above in black with blacked out windows. You're like drug dealer spec.
Yeah, yeah. Blacked out Merc is bad guy coded. I think white or silver Merc is rich guy coded.
Oh yeah.
If I was to see a white Merc roll up somewhere, I'd be like, chances are there's a Sultan in the back of that somewhere, you know?
Yeah. No, I get you, man.
So yeah, like there's a lot of stereotypes out there. We didn't really even cover that many, to be honest. But I don't want to just kind of list all of the stereotypes we know. But what I want to do is look at kind of where they came from and how they're influenced, I think, and how we're influenced. And I think kind of the best place to start for that is maybe what the manufacturers want us to feel about certain cars and certain brands, which kind of brings us on to like advertising.
Yeah. No, I'm on board. Can we start with a personal favourite of mine?
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
While it's not very PC, I just think the adverts are amazing, and that is Aston Martin. And they do exactly what the advert needs to do, and they do it well. The one I'm talking about is like the one where he's on a Riviera somewhere. He's driving along, and all the women are waving at his car, and then at the end it goes, Aston likes women, women like Astons. The idea being, if you have an Aston, you'll get loads of women.
Yeah, which is always really interesting because like I'm pretty sure most women don't really give a fuck about cars. Like
Yeah,
they have no. It's all about men's idea of what women want. Really, you're selling to the man all of the time his idea of who he could be.
yeah, and
And a
that's
lot of
really
car
it.
adverts are aspirational like that. Like especially the luxury brands, they tend to want to evoke like this kind of feeling or this image of who drives their cars.
Yes. Although, off the back of that as well, that I did read a really interesting thing from Lamborghini and Ferrari. And it was, so why is there never Lamborghini or Ferrari adverts on the television? And they turned around and said, because the people who buy Lamborghinis and Aston Martins are not watching television. And I was like, that's actually quite an interesting take on it.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like they've identified who they want their target audience to be or who their target audience is, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, it's interesting though, because like, while Ferrari and Lamborghini might not advertise on TV, Porsche definitely does, and so does Audi. You know, when Audi were trying to sell their R8,
Yes.
it was
I,
on, like, it was advertised at cinemas a lot, which I always thought was really quite strange. And it's advertised on TV as well. And I always found I don't know, I found it slightly weird that they were putting an advertisement for like an Audi R8 before a film. When like, most people who got films are kind of like, maybe kids. There's like mostly kids films on. I don't know actually. I don't really go to the cinema very often.
do you know, I think I've got an explanation for that though. And it's why Ford was so popular when they were doing really well in the rallying. You know, like the Mark One Focus was everywhere; it was ubiquitous. And at the time, they had McRae absolutely storming through stages, giving it 12 tenths, like an absolute hero. And it's the halo effect.
Yeah, you think it's like brand association. It's like, oh, wow, that's a really, really cool Audi R8. Maybe I'll get an Audi too.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the thing is as well, when you're putting that in, when it's like in front of a kids' film, like kids between the ages of like 5 and 8, for example, when they're really impressionable and they see this thing, it just looks incredible, this Audi R8 absolutely belting across the screen, and it's like, it kind of puts a thing in your mind. It's almost like engineering brand loyalty.
Or making a poster car.
That's it exactly.
Because yeah, you don't. I mean, I'm sure kids still have posters, but like, there's so much media out there as well that's kind of visual media is what's like on screens is what's consumed.
Oh yeah, and I think that's the whole point of it, is to try especially for a company like Audi that does literally everything. Well, I'm not going to say from budget cars, but from relatively affordable bargain basement spec cars to supercars. That halo effect must pay, because the whole thing with the halo effect is people don't actually want the car they're seeing, they just want part of it. And that part of it is the badge. That's the most accessible part to buy. So you buy a cheaper car that has the same badge.
I think you're absolutely right. Like, I think that is exactly what it is. I think it's really difficult to kind of sell a car because car adverts don't really just give you like that many facts anymore. They always try and evoke that kind of feeling, but you can't really emulate the feeling of what it's like to drive a car just by watching something.
No, definitely not.
So they have to kind of sell it on like, oh, technology is a big one that they sell it on. Like, you see it's like the car and it's in like the future or like in like a deserted city and there's like loads of like light and stuff like that. And then it's like something about Apple CarPlay being integrated into it. And then there's the finance options.
It's actually quite interesting that you brought up Android CarPlay there as well, because that's as an advertising thing. Like, people tend to be either iPod, Apple, or Android. So like,
Yeah.
they're even biting into an exterior brand loyalty to try and sell their cars.
Yeah, that's quite interesting actually. I think most new cars you can get one or the other fitted, but it's wild that you have to pick one.
Yeah, like, why can't you just have two? Because it's only software.
Yeah. I
And
mean, that's so strange. Yeah, I can't say I've ever used like Apple CarPlay or Android Play or whatever they are called. I mean, I don't have anything new enough for that.
I have used them due to being the biggest consumer of rental cars for a short period of time, and it is actually a game changer. So it is. I can't understate, it's such a subtle improvement
But
in the
what's it
way
do?
that. So it basically interfaces, right? Do you know, you jump into a car, right, and you go into sat nav, for example, and you go, I want to go somewhere. So you go in and you have to select the country. Well, in Europe anyway, you have to select the country and then the city and then the road, and then you have to go like that. And it's actually a bit of a ball ache for if you're not going to someone's house. Like, if you're
Yeah.
going to a business, it can actually be difficult because of that.
Oh, you do not have to tell me. Like, I have a BMW, and it has the worst sat nav from like 2015 with the stupid twisty iDrive system,
Yeah.
which just makes typing addresses take ages.
Well,
Oh,
see that, right? If you have Android Auto on in your car, you jump in, you pair your phone to it, you pick your phone up when you're sitting in the car park before you leave, and you just Google what you're wanting to do, hit the little navigation button, and it's like bish bash bosh, job done. It's on the car and it loads up everything, and you use your phone as the interface, but then when you're driving along, it basically mirrors your phone. So then you're using your Spotify, and when you click into the Spotify on the screen, it actually comes up like Spotify does on your phone. So it's not like using whatever Volvo, for example, say their native look for Spotify should be.
yeah.
It emulates your phone in the car essentially, and it sounds like if you were into driving, you'd absolutely hate this, but it's such the way it works is so subtle, and it just is such a massive quality of life improvement because of that. That it's really good.
So yeah, okay, maybe Android Auto and the like is an absolute game changer when it comes to like convenience.
I mean, it is good, but I mean, back to the point, like what you were saying about selling cars with technology, it absolutely is a thing. In fact, it's actually quite mental because it's almost like for me, advertising is always sex or violence. Like that's your two most primeval things. Like the Aston Martin advert that I described earlier, it very clearly appeals to one of those things. But
Yeah.
when you have a car, oh, like a Gumper Apollo, for example, we're going a bit left field here. If you wanted to advertise that, it's so brutal and like so utilitarian about it. It's almost violent in its appearance. So like
Yeah.
you would play into that
It's
for
an
an advertisement.
aggressive shaped car.
Yeah. So like yeah, I mean for me that was always the two kind of things that advertising went for. Like in perfume adverts, for example, you know, it's
Yeah, I
all
feel like perfume and car adverts share a similar kind of vibe a lot of the time.
definitely. Because a lot of the time they warble on for 15 seconds, not really saying anything, and then you just have a car badge or a fucking designer boutique badge appear.
Yeah, I totally. Can you right? Just thinking, I was just thinking back and about adverts about from cars that you remember aside from the Aston one. Is there any like kind of mainstream TV adverts you remember from, 10-ish years ago, 10 plus years ago?
Yes, there's the one for the Volkswagen Polo,
Oh, I
and
still remember that.
I remember it for all the reasons that the advertising man that designed that advert doesn't want me to remember it for. So
Right.
it was like when self parking was a big thing, like when side facing, rear facing, and forward facing cameras came out, and then they started doing a bit of programming because of electronic power steering and stuff, where they could have the car park itself.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
So it was right at the height of that, right? And the advert pushed 2 points home really, really well. And so the point it pushed home was the self parking feature, right? And then it pushed home that if somebody walks out in front of it or you're not paying attention, the car will automatically brake to stop you having an accident.
Hmm.
And what I took away from the advert was that if you buy a Polo, you can't drive and you don't pay any attention.
Yeah. I mean, when you told me that, immediately I was like, right, so does that mean the car will just randomly brake whenever one of its sensors decides it needs to brake? Because that's a bit worrying.
Yeah, man. So like if say you're like it's commonly thrown in with like adaptive cruise control. So if you're going along the motorway, right, and everything stops in front of you, the car will be like, the guy in front's not moving, and it'll put a warning on the dash saying, please brake. And then it'll wait like a second, and it'll be like, fuck this, I'm braking for you. And then you'll peel your eyeballs off of the window.
Yes.
It's actually like we tested it in a hire car one day in Europe, and we just kept going, and it was pretty slow speed. It was like in a city, so it was like 30 mile an hour, 50 kilometers an hour, something like that, and I just didn't brake, and the car absolutely dug into the tarmac, like it stopped on a penny.
It went to 100% brake very
Oh yeah,
quickly.
and like it properly had a hissy fit. It's like brake, 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 and then it just went bang. That's you stopped.
Oh yeah, I mean, whenever I drive a newer car, I kind of always like remember how many bings, bongs, and warnings and indicators, and it really, really wants my attention,
Oh
and
yeah.
it wants my attention to remind me to pay attention to driving, which would be great if I was asleep, but I'm not often asleep when I drive.
No, as is
Arguably, no time. I am asleep when I drive.
as is evidenced by the fact that you're here talking to us today.
Yeah, they're just I don't know, maybe I'm like a little bit boomer on that, but I just like not that much distraction when I'm driving. Like honestly, especially if you're driving somewhere new at night and it's like a really complicated urban system as well. Like, I'm not always a big fan of the car constantly telling me things. I'm really concentrating on which sign I'm looking for next.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's actually quite interesting. Well, my advert example and then everything you've just said kind of supported it, which is that if you market to a certain type of person, i.e., in this case, somebody who's not really all that interested in driving, it's very, very easy to alienate people who are interested in driving.
Yeah, I think that's maybe what kind of differentiates a car from a product sometimes as well.
Yeah. Like, I imagine that advert for the Volkswagen Polo probably would have hurt Polo GTI sales because you tend to buy the GTI version if you're actually quite interested in driving, but then you're buying a car where everyone at large is being told that you can't drive well, and you also don't pay any attention, so you might crash into people. So that's something I wouldn't want to be associated with. I would not buy a Polo off the strength of that advert because it's like, well, it's portraying everything about me in a negative light here.
Yeah, no, I do understand where you're coming from on that. Yeah, it's almost like they're kind of trying to talk down to you a little bit, being like, "Oh, we know you struggle, so we've put in all of these aids, and because you feel like you don't struggle, you can find that quite patronizing."
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. Some noises from cars and some of the warnings are really patronizing. But I more just find the sheer amount of stuff it's always wanting from me at any moment kind of like quite distracting.
Oh yeah. In fact, actually, I've got another one here, another advert that popped into my mind, and that was when the GT86 first came out,
Oh yeah.
and it got banned in the UK because they said it showed dangerous driving and encouraged speeding. Funnily enough, right? And it was like it was this lovely house, and well, it wasn't a lovely house. It was like, when I say lovely, it was a very nice house, but it was attainable to a normal mortal human being. It wasn't like a £4 million mansion. It was a nice house on the outskirts of a town, right? And then it zoomed in, and it was in the bedroom, and there was a man and a woman sleeping. And then the man got up and like threw his trousers on really quickly and darted down and jumped in the car. And then it was like a rally stage into the centre of the town, like sliding around roundabouts and everything. And then it shows him in a shop picking up milk and paying for it, and then back in the car, and then he's like driving like an absolute lunatic all the way back to the house. And then when it gets back to the house, it's like in the kitchen, and he sits the milk down, and his missus is waiting with a bowl of cereal that doesn't have any milk in it. And it's like the whole point of the advert is the ethos of the GT86, which is it makes every boring journey interesting because it's fun to drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that. Really stuck with me as well.
Yeah, no, I quite like that one. Like it's showing the car as fun,
Yeah.
which is probably what we're looking for from a car.
Yeah, like off the back of watching that advert, I would legitimately have went and fired 25k into a Toyota dealership to have a GT86. Like that was advertising done right for me.
Aye, I quite like the GT86.
Have you ever driven one?
No, I've not.
Oh, you need to, honestly.
It's one of those cars that's always been kind of on my radar a little bit as something. Oh yeah, no, maybe that would be quite nice. Kind of waiting for them to be a little bit cheaper. But also sometimes the low power does kind of slightly put me off.
See, honestly, man, the low power makes it better. I test drove one when they were new. I was actually looking at like trading my RX-8 in for one, and it's just sheer luck that I didn't. Like I was really desperately quite keen on it. And they have Toyota Prius tyres, which means they're not awfully sticky, and they're relatively under-tired for a new car as well. And it kind of slides about in its own footprint.
Yeah.
Like, very, very playful, and not like you don't have to be pushing on either. Like at a moderate pace, which is not an illegal pace on some of the tighter roads round about here. When I took it out on road test, it was absolutely electric.
Yeah, no, I bet it's a good drive. Definitely,
Yeah.
bet it's a good drive.
No, I'm really keen on them, and that would actually be a good project car for us, dude.
I mean, yeah, It would be really good. I don't know how much they are at the moment, though. They might be a little bit pricey for a first project car.
Aspirations, man, aspirations.
Oh, actually, I did want to bring up one more advert, which was I saw one really recently because I was watching something, I can't remember what it was, and it was a Renault. I think it was an electric Renault, and the advert was like a bunch of. It was framed as like the French Revolution, so you had all the old-fashioned dressed up aristocracy with like their kind of garden party and their cake in their like manor, like palace in the countryside, and then there was like a bunch of kind of revolutionaries who showed up and like stole the electric cars and then like drove about and smashed them through cakes and stuff like that.
Right.
And I think the whole idea is going through like the revolution, the electric revolution, etc. I was watching it and I was like, I wonder how detached from reality, how storyish it has to be before you can start getting away with kind of more dangerous driving, because in that there was like cars driving near horses, like driving around near people, driving through cakes and stuff like that. Like I think if you just filmed that on the road as part of an advert, they probably wouldn't like that.
Yeah. Well, that Toyota GT86 got banned for that, and I'm not surprised to be because that was actually like go and treat the roads like a drift track. That's essentially what the advert said.
Yeah,
But
you could do this too.
yeah, like the thing is it's all a bit nanny state-ish. I don't like it, but I understand. I don't understand why they're doing it. But yeah, no, I reckon you have to be quite far removed from it.
Have you seen some of the American adverts for trucks that are? There was one where they recreated a battle in the American Civil War and used like pickup trucks instead of horses, I think, or in addition to horses. Like there's a lot of weird kind of reenactment stuff in car adverts, like reenacting something but just chucking your car you're trying to flog in it.
Yeah, I can see how that would work in certain segments of America, though.
Oh yeah, it probably does appeal to a few people.
Especially nowadays, given the political landscape over there. But yeah, we'll stay away from that subject.
I think that's wise, very wise. Maybe one of the last things we should talk about branding in cars is, because it's kind of contemporary news, is the Jaguar rebrand.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I don't know if we've ever talked about this.
We haven't, no.
I can probably guess your thoughts on it, but I would like to hear them.
I would like you to go first.
Okay, so I think it is a little bit of a misstep from Jaguar. Like I can totally see why they wanted to do it, but I think that it was quite a big departure from what Jaguar is kind of understood and known to be, and the fact that they didn't really it was more just like vibes. The whole advert was like, this is Jaguar's vibe now, and you can't just rebrand yourself like that. You need to lay a little bit of groundwork and things to prepare for a transition. That's a really jarring rebrand that was quite divisive. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think that the font they've used reminds me of the same kind of font you would see on like a pair of hair straighteners or curlers or something like that. It's got a very beauty brand-esque kind of aesthetic.
Yeah.
I'm not a massive fan of the rebrand, but ultimately, I don't care. It's Jaguar, and as much as I like Jags, I don't know if I'd hurry to own another one.
No. I mean, I was actually kind of in the dark about this, and I was like, I need to have a look to familiarise myself with it again. And they're almost posing it as a work of art, going by like the text and everything along with it. And it's like everything's exuberant and a radical new design language. It's like, nah, I'm not really buying this. Like, you're a car that's driven pretty much exclusively by tax dodgers in my mind. When you speak to someone and they're like, oh, I own my own business and it's a cash only business, and they go, oh well, what do you drive then? They go, oh, a Jag. Like that's the sort of traditional view of Jag I have.
We're back to car stereotypes as well. Yeah.
And it is very much a bit of a baddie car.
Yeah, old Jags are kind of a bad guy car. Honestly, for me, basically because of JLR's reputation, kind of recently for after I think it's post Ford ownership, like
Yeah,
Jaguar Land Rover. I just feel kind of like a bit bad for people that buy Jags now because like I just think that they're not nice enough to justify how unreliable they are.
definitely not.
Like there's some cars I'd be willing to take some reliability pain for because they're special enough. But I
Do you
just don't
know,
see Jaguar's lineup as special enough.
a really big issue with this is the proliferation of diesel engines, though.
Oh
Because
yes.
legitimately, I would own a Jaguar. Like, if I had the money sitting right next to me now, and somebody went, "Do you want to buy a Jag XF S, the 3 litre V6 petrol one with the supercharger?" I'd be like, "Yes, absolutely," because the petrol ones actually tend to be quite reliable. All the ones they have problems with are diesels or Land Rovers.
Hmm.
But legitimately, if they really wanted to improve their image, what they would need to do is sort out the standard of their engineering and get away from diesels. Like that's it.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
legitimately, all you have to do to increase your car sales is fix the biggest problem with your cars, and that is that they are crap.
Yeah. And also with Land Rovers that they're very, very easy to steal.
Yes.
Like a lot of cars are really easy to steal now, but the fact that people were struggling to get insurance quotes on Land Rovers in places in the UK because they were just so easy for people to steal
It's crazy.
is kind of wild, yeah. So we've talked about adverts a bit so far, but what about cars in other, kind of media like TV and movies, which, to be honest, I'm more excited to talk about than adverts. Adverts were a bit of a necessary evil to get us here.
Yeah, man. Along the same lines as you're thinking here, because there's some pretty kick-ass cars in films.
Yeah. There's like a lot of core kind of car memories from when I was really young, or TV and movies, definitely.
Yeah, man. Like, and the thing is, well, not even like dedicated car films. Like, it's literally in everything.
Absolutely not. Especially when I was younger, I would love just seeing all of the different cars. Like it almost didn't really matter what they were. I just loved, I was always looking at the cars rather than the people on the screen.
Yeah, man. And you know what? As about that as well, you cannot beat spotting a good cameo appearance by a car.
What do you mean by a cameo? Do you mean when you just see one in shot that's like
Yeah.
not
So
really a core part of the story?
like for example, we've been rewatching NCIS, and like we'll be watching it, I'll be like, there, FD3S type RX7. There, did you see that, Bex? Did you see that? And she's like, "You're a sad motherfucker." I'm like, "It's cool though."
No, I'm on your side on this one. Like I really like just kind of seeing cars, knowing them, get excited for rare stuff that comes up. You're totally right. But I think also on our topic of discussion, we want to talk about like what the cars can say about the characters in TV and movies, and how like good car casting can be really impactful, but it's not maybe always done fantastically. And also there's the kind of maybe the opposite of deliberate car casting for the movie, and that's just product placement where like you see a suspiciously large number of GM products in the movie, or
Michael Bay.
like suddenly everyone's driving a Mercedes and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. Yeah, man. Let's dive into this. I'm looking forward to this.
Cool, yeah, let's go for it.
I kind of want to start on the films that do it badly because, like, just off the top of my head, there's a lot that pops to mind that does it really good.
Yeah,
Like,
I can think of good examples quite easily as well because they're the ones I remember.
yeah. And even, like, for example, Transporter 1 with the 750 BM,
Yeah.
amazing car casting. Transporter 2 and 3, not so much.
Do you know what the car was in Transporter 3? I've never seen it. I remember that 2 was the Audi S8, I want to say.
It was the was it W12? Yeah, W12 A8, which was like, it was actually almost as, I think it was faster than an S8 actually, because it was like 650 brake. But it was the same car in 3 as it was in 2, and it was basically just a massive car advert for Audi.
Not really an exciting car. I mean, you could argue the BMW is an exciting car, but the BMW has more presence than the Audi, I think.
Yeah, and also the BMW, although it's the executive one, it's kind of cool because they never sold them in a manual. Yet I forget who made the Transporter, who directed it and everything, but he basically went to BMW and went, I want the 750 Li, but I want it to be manual. And they're like, cool, special projects division, make that manual. And they're like, boom, job done. So like there's actually a 750 Li kicking about around there that's a genuine BMW factory manual. Although it was a special project conversion, it was still a factory manual.
So that was actually made by BMW themselves, because I know that a lot of films will, get fabrication shops and stuff, and like people who actually do make custom builds, they'll get them to like adapt a lot of cars for actual filming.
That was a genuine, like, BMW done that for them. BMW actually have a bit of a history with this as well, because the Johnny English films, Johnny English 2, I think it was, he has the Rolls Royce.
I haven't seen it.
Well, he's got a Rolls Royce in it, and there was an interview I watched with Rowan Atkinson. He was talking about it, and he's like, well, this was after BMW bought Rolls Royce, and he says, I knew they had like quad turbo V12s or V16s in development, but they scrapped it, and it was just a prototype engine. And he was like, he went to BMW, he's like, could you put one of them in the Rolls Royce Phantom for the film? And BMW were like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, that is quite a wild project, actually.
Yeah, so like stuff like that is really cool. But aside from that side of it, just the implementation of the car casting in Transporter 1 is fantastic. Like all the baddies are in S500 and S600 Mercs, which is much more of a bad guy car than a 750 BMW, I reckon.
Aye, yeah, no, I can totally see that. Was the BMW in? Oh, I want to say Tomorrow Never Dies, but I'm not 100% sure. You know the James Bond where he got the BMW? It was a 7 Series as well. Was it 750?
Yes, there was a 7 Series, and then the Z8 was also in one of those films with Pierce Brosnan. I can't remember which one.
Aye, that was the one with the helicopter and the spinny blades.
Yeah, the Buzzsaw helicopter.
Buzzsaw helicopter, yeah, because the Z8 gets cut in half.
It does. I bet BMW were fucking over the moon about that one. Here's an incredibly rare car for your film.
Oh no, they were totally up for it because they actually wanted their cars in there. That was like a big BMW sponsorship. James Bond has always been, well, not always, but as like recently has always been kind of product placement for cars. Like Aston, big deal with them for that. Jaguar had a big deal with them for one of the films. Ford did as well. That was one where the Casino Royale one that everyone laughs at because he's driving a Ford Mondeo, but that was the brand new Ford Mondeo before release,
Right. Fair enough. Aston has a bit of a problem, doesn't it? Clearly sexist adverts, and then product placement with the biggest womanizer in films.
Yeah, Aston definitely wants to project a certain image, doesn't it?
It really does. Fucking power to them,
I was going to say that Aston's one of those car brands that I just don't get excited about. Like, I think the most contemporary Aston I really like is the 90s Vantage, the 90s like really square boxy Vantage. I like the way that car looks, and I like some of the older Vantages as well, but the new stuff I'm just so indifferent to. The styling is not, I don't know, it's just not really for me, to be honest. I find them kind of bland.
I would have a DBS, but nothing apart from that.
The DBS was a slightly more like kind of sporty. It had a slightly kind of like, it was a bit lower, a bit more aggressive.
That's the one.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't think it does it for me. So we've talked about Transporter, which we liked. How did you find the BMW and the James Bond movie then? Because I actually remember watching that when I was a kid and like I think it was because of what they do with the car as the stunt, like remote control driving it about in the garage and stuff.
Yeah, that was
I do
cool.
love a good car chase in a multi-story like car park. They're great. They're such cliche, but I really enjoy them. So yeah, I really like that. But I kind of like the car, to be honest. Even when I was like kind of younger.
Yeah. No, a 7 Series BM is cool, especially of that vintage. Off the back of that, the big one is GM and
Aye.
Michael Bay. And
Ye-
do you know the thing that astounds me with this is I struggle to think of a car manufacturer that has quite as expansive a car range as GM does, like across the whole GM product family. Like you've got Pontiac and Holden and Vauxhall and an Opel and fuck knows what Saab, for example. Everything's under the GM banner, you know? Yet they're all really poor. Like watching Transformers, and I'm just like, I don't buy it. I don't buy that he would have the Camaro. And even then, I don't even think a Camaro is a great fit for the character because he's a bit of a fucking dork. And Camaros are meant to be driven by murderers. You know?
I mean, I think the whole point behind that really was I think the original Bumblebee was a yellow Camaro.
Yeah, like the old Z28 sort of style.
Aye. And they just wanted, they wanted to show off their fancy new
Camaro.
lineup. Yeah. It's just funny to see the picture of like the Transformers and they're all different GM vehicles, like brand new different GM vehicles.
Yeah.
And like you've got a diverse product line, but they also don't have the most exciting stuff in it.
No, and I mean, like they could have had like the Holden Maloo in there, and had a Transformer that was an absolute lunatic, mental patient, axe murderer, and it would have fit, and it would have been a really good watch because it's like here's a Holden Maloo HSV, and it turns into a psychopathic robot. Like that's on brand.
Yeah. I'm not really sure if I can remember many of the cars from the Transformer films now that I actually think about it. Like they just kind of washed over me. I can remember that the main one, Bumblebee, is a yellow Camaro, and I can remember that there's a truck.
Yeah. There's also an F-22 Raptor jet, and that's like as far as my knowledge of the Transformers goes. Like, but as an example of bad car casting, absolute A game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're struggling to remember what the cars were, but we just knew that it wasn't like very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So, I think now we've kind of covered the bad ones because we had to get that out the way. Let's go to the good ones.
Yes, let's talk about like some of our faves. I'm looking forward to this.
The one I'm gonna ask you about first was the film that I threw you a couple of days back and was like, you have to watch this. What did you think of Wheelman? Car wise, anyway, not film wise.
I thought the film was all right. It's weird just to talk about the film, right? It's
Go for it.
so it's kind of strange because like I didn't like the main guy very much at all, and I thought that he made fairly silly decisions throughout. But what I will say is I enjoyed the fact that it was like filmed very claustrophobically, and like it felt really tight, and there was no like grand exterior shots of the car power sliding around corners. Like all of the driving you saw from like kind of a low down camera looking at the main character's face and stuff, and I really liked that. I felt like you actually got a better sense of kind of speed and like what the car was doing than it just wide shots of it just kind of driving past.
Yeah.
So I really liked that, and I thought the car choice was, what was it, a BMW 3 Series?
I'd have to rewatch it to be sure because everything I read tells me that it's an E46, but I am positive I remember it being an E39 in the film because I was positive it was an E39 M5, but I'm happy to be wrong. Yeah, what you said about the camera angles as well, it actually imbued it with like a sense of peril. Like,
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember the bit where he gets sideswiped.
Yeah.
By like the guys that he abandoned right at the start. and it comes out of absolutely nowhere because the camera's so tight and you're not seeing what's really happening wider. So like it actually does feel like you've just suddenly been crashed into.
Yeah, and like just the way it was like, I don't know if ultra realistic is the way to go, because in fact it might be, because the way that it conveys it very much feels like if you're, not that I've ever been in that situation of being a wheelman and kind of driving a getaway car and then fucking everyone off. Sorry if you've not watched the film, I've just kind of ruined it for you. But yeah, like, not that I've ever been in that situation, but I would imagine, and it conveys that sense very well, that, oh fuck, a little bit of paranoia, but also like the peril and the urgency of the situation. It imbues it. It really does convey it well.
Yes, yeah, I agree. It's I did really enjoy the movie. It was just I just didn't particularly agree with what the main guy did. Didn't think his decisions made very much sense.
Fair enough.
But yeah, and I know you were talking about the actual protagonist's like normal car, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And soon as in the movie he refers to the Porsche, I was like, all right, okay, so this is going to be like a 70s or maybe 80s Carrera, like 911 Carrera.
Yeah.
It just felt like that would be the appropriate car, and I think it is. I'm not really can't remember what year of 911 it was, but that's exactly what it was. So I kind of anticipated it, but that's probably shows that it was maybe the right choice.
Yeah. And the thing is as well, like, because certainly when I watch it, I get it conveyed that he's a very, very competent driver. And that if he
Hmm.
wasn't a fucking criminal, he'd probably really enjoy going to like track days and stuff. Like
Um,
somebody that takes joy in driving, and to the point where he's now made it his job to drive for his main source of income as a wheelman. And the fact that he's got this 90s, early 2000s BMW as his throwaway tool of the trade almost, two of the finest driving chassis from that era, the E46 and E39, because I can't remember which one it is. I'm positive it's E39, but whatever one it is, it's one of the finest driving chassis that was widely available at that time. And then to have that, where do you really go from there for your personal car? Well, you're looking at Lotus's 911 Carreras, 911 GT models, although they weren't in the 70s and 80s. But that's the sort of ilk you're looking at. And I thought that was a really cool like casting choice for the car.
yeah, I felt like it really worked.
Yeah. And the fact that there's like mismatched panels on the wheelman car just kind of added to the throwaway character. It was so anonymous looking. It was
I
just
know he talks about that at the start. He's like bitching about the fact that the car that they. So my reading it was that they got they stole a car and then they had certain kind of parts put on it that he chose to like make it kind of an acceptable getaway car. But when they actually delivered it off, he was like, it's got a red trunk. Like how can it be nondescript if it's got like a red trunk? So he was like kind of pissed off at that, and like that's kind of like it's like one of those jobs that you shouldn't have taken, but you did, and it's just a bad feeling the whole time, and everything is just a bit off. That's what I took that kind of to symbolize. Like this is the start of a bad night.
yeah. No, it was really well done, I thought. And certainly if you're into cars and car chases and car films, it's worth a watch. Big time.
Yeah, I'd agree. It is totally worth a watch. Yeah, 100%. There's some good car films out there, actually. There definitely is.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, we'll go there. The OG Fast and Furious. I personally feel the car casting was pretty decent in that.
I like the cars that were in that because they were so of their time, and I remember that time. I don't think I'd want any of them as they were upgraded, but I love the cars.
Yeah, like I wouldn't want a neon green Mitsubishi Eclipse. I would, However, quite like a Mitsubishi Eclipse with like the 2-litre engine in it, and then do an Evo chassis drivetrain conversion or something like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, Clips never really did it for me, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, really, do you know what would have been a better choice for the car casting there? Because they gave him, like, they could have gave him an Evo, but they gave him an Eclipse, right? What would have been really cool is if they gave him a Mirage.
Was the
which
Mirage little hatch?
No, there was a Mirage Coupe, and it
All
looked
right.
like an Evo 6, but it's a two-door coupe. And it's a really popular swap in like Australia and New Zealand to put an Evo drivetrain into them and make like a two-door coupe Mitsubishi Evo.
Yeah, that's really appealing.
I feel that would have been a better way to go. But I mean, on the whole, like the rest of it, I actually there was a documentary came out. Well, I say documentary; it was a bit of a mockumentary, really, because it's about Fast and Furious. It came out off the back of it, and it went into great depth over like the color of the car and the decals on the cars and like how they were the type of car and who the character that drove the car was. And I can't remember any of it, but I do remember it all making sense.
Yeah, they felt appropriate for sure.
Yeah. No, definitely. It all fit, it slotted together really well.
I really like examples of specifically in TV shows where the cars a character has changes and matures over time, or they have a single car that ages with the show and the characters. So, like, have you ever watched Trailer Park Boys?
No, I have not.
Okay, so Trailer Park Boys is like this mockumentary about some kind of like petty criminals that live in a rural trailer park in Canada. So it's like, kind of Canadian, kind of like rednecks a little bit.
Yeah.
And you kind of like it's shot as if it's like a documentary crew going to film their kind of like these two guys, Ricky and Julian's kind of like day-to-day antics.
Right. Okay.
And it just kind of it continues on from there. And it's like lasted so many seasons. It's actually really, really good, although it starts to decline in quality towards the end a little bit. But it's a fantastic show, really, really funny. But Ricky, one of the characters, has like this kind of clapped out, beat up black car. It's like a Chevy or a Buick or something. It's like big, boxy, kind of nondescript 80s massive car. And it's like kind of a piece of shit, which really suits his character because it's like just kind of cobbled together and barely kind of functioning, but it does. But over the course of the shows, like many seasons, it becomes like more and more trashed, and they just kind of like leave it. It starts to become its own plot point at how like shagged it's got. And then one of the other characters, who's like the guy who kind of maintains and enforces the trailer park, who's an ex-cop and an alcoholic, Jim Leahy. He drives this like classic, and again a big massive kind of 80s brick, classic kind of old police kind of styled thing. It's like a park supervisor or park security, but it's like looks like an old police car. And over the course of the show, it has its like roof ripped off and like a door gets taken, and again it just carries on being used. So it becomes this like it kind of follows the character of Jim Leahy's kind of like descent into alcoholism again, and like him kind of just like his life falling apart, and his car is doing exactly the same. It's mirroring his journey. I really quite like stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like it lends to the character development really nicely.
Yeah, it's totally. It's part of the character development. It's part of the story.
No, definitely, and the symbolism is quite cool as well.
Yeah,
Like,
I think another show that does that really, the cars really help reinforce and tell a story, and like they're so in keeping and so suited to characters as Breaking Bad. Like it's definitely been talked about before as like how good the car casting on Breaking Bad is, but it is absolutely fantastic. Like you've watched Breaking Bad, yeah?
yes, I've seen the whole series right through, and I was skirting round this subject when I was like talking before because it does it so well. Yeah, I mean, run with your point though. I don't want to steal it because it just does it amazingly well.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to bring up a few like kind of examples. So, like again, on that whole character, the car changing with the character. Like, there's definitely that moment in Breaking Bad where, Walt's kind of been on that gradual tilt into kind of almost like being open about who he is and like really becoming, for lack of a better word, Heisenberg. And like he
Yeah,
goes and he gets rid of the Pontiac Aztec, and he gets the 300C SRT in like black, and he gets his son the Challenger as well.
yeah.
Like it's such a massive like kind of like
Shift. It's like because the Aztec is so anonymous and boring and just fucking horrible.
yeah. I mean, it's just kind of it's the color of the Aztec as well. It's that really really neutral kind of like faded like flat green
Yeah,
that just gives the car no presence at all.
it's so inoffensive. Like it's exactly what a teacher would drive. You know.
Yeah. It's a meek kind of car in some ways. Utilitarian, practical, unassuming, all of that kind of stuff.
And then the shift to the 300 SRT8 it's like the shift from I'm just a school teacher to I'm the fucking mob boss.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Do what
got
you're
big
told.
mob boss energy, doesn't it?
It does, but it fits the character development so beautifully. So it does. Do you know the only one I disagree with in Breaking Bad was Jesse
Oh yeah, why?
because I don't. So he had the lowrider, the Monte Carlo, right? And that kind of fitted him because he was this plastic gangster at the start, you know? He
Yeah,
was like bulldog mouth, puppy dog brain, you know?
totally. Yeah, he was a bit of a wannabe. He like wanted to look the part.
Yeah. And then he ends up in some Toyota wagon, like not wagon, estate. And it's just like, really? Like, come on. There'd be so much more, because it doesn't really convey his importance or anything like that. Like I don't know. I think they missed the mark on Jesse, but literally every other character in the show absolutely on board.
Can I offer my thoughts on why they went with the change for Jesse that they did?
Go for it, man.
So I think that the change for Jesse to the Toyota estate kind of represents him becoming a bit more like serious and less almost kind of like less concerned about looking the part because he's like he's actually in it, if you know what I mean. He's now like really doing this kind of like criminal, well, I suppose he was already like selling it. I suppose it's just I think it shows a kind of more a shift to a more serious Jesse, to be honest.
Yeah. Do you know, like, I know it's not the point though, because they're trying, like, the thing is, this isn't a car show. It's a show about making meth, essentially. But like,
Yes.
for me, becoming serious, a free series, 330i, that would have shown that as well and been a much nicer machine and a much nicer car. And I realise that's not the point, and it's part of my view of cars kind of creeping into it and colouring my view of the car casting. But I feel there was better choices for it. I don't disagree with what you're saying about how his character developed and that's why the car changed. I just think there would be better ways to display that.
Totally, but I mean, you've got to also keep it in a kind of budgetary sense as well, because like Jesse didn't like all the money Jesse had would have probably been in his lowrider or something like that. So
Yeah.
then when it gets shot and has to be destroyed, he's like he needs just something that's like kind of a bit more serious, practical, and basic. So it's just a car, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But like I do see what you mean. I just think it's like I think it does really contextualize like where kind of Jesse is at the start of it.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. There's one I think that we will both absolutely agree on though. And that's Gussie's Volvo.
Yeah, That's a good choice. It's such an unassuming, kind of like quite like restrained car choice.
It conveys a sense of calmness, which he very much does have.
Yeah, it's it's a very low key, unassuming choice. It's trying to hide itself away and not really be noticed, which is kind of all, Custard's kind of like hiding in plain sight, keeping kind of
On the down low almost. I hate using that phrase, but yeah.
yeah. It's just like it's a kind of a fairly kind of practical car that the owner of a series of fast food restaurants might kind of own, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, like it does what he needs it to do, and that's literally it. Like he's not bothered one way or the other. It's just a tool.
Yeah, totally. I think it's really well cast. Same thing, I think, with Saul's car, the Cadillac DeVille.
Yeah, it's very dodgy lawyer.
It's so good. It's so appropriate. Did you watch
Better Call
the
Saul.
yeah, Better Call Saul?
I did not.
Okay, so the car casting does continue a little bit in that one as well. He starts off in like a kind of yellow economy hatch, and then he gets like a kind of swanky job offer that comes with I think it's something like it's something German and silver. Who knows? BMW, Audi, Mercedes, one of them. And like it's all really really nice. It kind of represents he's become like really corporate and successful. But then his mug doesn't fit in the cup holder, and eventually like that's kind of like the it doesn't fit, if you know what I mean. This doesn't fit. It's not me. So
Yeah.
then he actually sacks that off, and then he ends up back with the like shitty car. But then kind of later on, as he gets more and more kind of corrupted, that's when he starts to like, he picks up the kind of sleazy Cadillac DeVille. It's got a really sleazy lawyer energy, that car.
Yeah. Even the name though, DeVille, kinda gives that energy though.
It's
Or
almost like devil.
yeah. Do you know another one? Dwelling on Breaking Bad, Mike, the Buick, well, the series of Buicks and then the Chrysler fits the character well. Because
Yeah, I think so too.
like he blends in, but not quite as much as Gus. Like if you saw Mike floating about, you'd be like, I think somebody's about to get done in here. That guy's a bit sus.
I was going to say the cars are kind of like they're a little bit older, they're a bit worn out, they're kind of like they're still functional, but they're just like maybe a little bit past their best, which kind of, feels maybe a touch on the nose, but it's kind of Mike.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's handy in a situation, but you could probably beat him in a fight. Is pretty much the way to sum the character up, I think.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good summation. Yeah.
The cars are on point.
Yeah, so we agreed that Breaking Bad is a fantastic example of really like appropriately casting a car for like a particular role and a particular role. But another one I do want to kind of bring up because it ties back to one of the examples we used at the start for a car that have quite strong stereotypes, which was the VW bus. And
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know if you've ever seen Little Miss Sunshine, but there, have you seen it?
No, I have not.
Okay, it's basically about this family that need to get their kind of youngest across the country to compete in like a spelling competition, and they've got this kind of old, slightly worn out, bright yellow VW T2 camper, like, or bus, not really a camper, it's just a bus, and like it's just it's like such a good casting of a car for that family. The family are like they're a little bit kind of weird, like they don't always like kind of get along very well and stuff like that. So their boss, which is a bit of a weird choice, it's like kind of old, it's a bit like dysfunctional. They all have to like push to get it to start because it doesn't like start on its own, which means they all have to like kind of like work together like once, and it's like it's quite a good casting, I think, for that car. I think it works really, really well.
Yeah, like, so does it? Do you think it represents it? I mean, I'm asking from a point of pure ignorance? Do you think it represents anything about the family, or is it more it's cast really well because it kind of adds to the film?
I think both, honestly.
Right.
I think the use of that bus and like what it actually is and like its condition and like the color scheme, and also the fact that the bus itself has like this kind of like alternative hippie kind of like that kind of connotation. I think that really helps like add a bit to the character of the family. The character of the family is also kind of like reflected back in the bus a little bit. So yeah, I think both in that case. Like it's not in a big way. I'm not going to say the whole movie hinges on it, but like it's just this very small way that I think that when you get the car casting right, it can really help add to the whole kind of story, the whole production.
Yeah, so like it more pays homage to it than is like a pivotal part.
Yeah. It's just kind of like it's just good. It's good world building in a lot of ways, and
Yeah.
character building. I think like it's like when you watch a movie or something like that, and someone's in exactly the right kind of home that they would be in, or they dress the kind of the way that you would expect them to dress. Like that kind of thing is it's good to help build how a character is. But you can also use that to kind of juxtaposition the character against a car, for example. Like if you see someone driving like a really kind of like quite a beat up, old, worn out car, but they're in an immaculate suit, what do you think? Do you think that that is that person's car?
Well, yeah, because it doesn't fit. Like it's very out of sync with what the rest of what you're seeing. My instant thought was they're on their way to a job interview.
I mean, honestly, could be like absolutely could be a stolen car.
Yeah,
Could be someone's had their car break down and had to borrow it for like an emergency or something like that. There's like, there's different reasons, some good, some bad, why someone would be in a car that's like not their own, if you know what I mean. And like, also the type of car kind of like would really influence that as well. I just think I like small kind of little things like that. I like these good, sensible casting decisions for cars. I like when everything fits. It doesn't. It's not like your character is for some reason in a brand new model, kind of like Audi Q7,
yeah,
this massive fucking car, and they're supposed to be like a legal secretary with a kid that lives on their own, if you know what I mean.
yeah.
And
Do
you're
you
like,
know,
right, okay.
I've got some examples of this. So, ones that clearly don't fit. Have you watched the Hitman films?
No, I don't think I have actually.
So, Agent 47 is always rocking about in a brand new Audi RS7. It just doesn't fit. Like, where did he get it from? Why has he got that? Why? It's just an advert. And the other one for this, well, the one on the other side, Jurassic Park 1 and 2. When you watch Jurassic Park, the first one, and you see the Jeep and the Ford Rangers. So the Ford Rangers are the tiger striped green and red ones that are automated and it's all computerized.
I
And then
remember
you've
those
got
ones, yeah.
and then the Jeeps are the gas powered Jeeps because it's all environmentally friendly. Now, when you watch that, I really can't think of another car that would fit the role as well as they do.
I absolutely agree. And you've also just completely blown my mind by saying that they were gas powered. That was what they were meant to be. Because that was what the sound overlaid between for these cars is weird.
Yeah, because like they make a big play on it because they say that the whole park is powered by a geothermal plant. I might be blurring the lines between the film and the book here, but the long and short of it is it's meant to be ecologically sound. Like the whole park is ran from a geothermal energy plant. And then the Jeeps that aren't electric, so the Ford Rain is it the Ford Rangers? I said no, Ford. The Ford Jeeps with the tiger striping in the red and green, those are electric and they run on the rail in the middle of the road, which
Aye.
is like what Hammond says when he's showing everybody them. And they run like a tram. And then you've got the gas powered Jeeps that are more free. They can basically go anywhere, but it's essentially like a forklift. They run off gas, LPG.
Mhm.
And it really fits the profile of the park, because it's like just the character of the vehicles and the job they're doing. They're very utilitarian and they fit the roles really well, but I just can't imagine anything else being in those roles.
Yeah, they've become quite iconic, haven't they?
They have. And then Jurassic Park 2, for example, you've got the team that are there to study and observe, and then you've got the InGen team that rock up with like on the Chinook helicopters, and it's very militaristic with lots of Humvees and sort of custom-made vehicles that you'd imagine like are more like special forces than a safari expedition, sort of to say.
Yeah, definitely.
And one of them is very invasive and very confrontational, almost militaristic. And then the other side of it, which is like the Mercedes bus with a bendy bit in the middle, and the two Mercedes ML 4x4s that they've got. And they're very camouflaged, and everything's designed to fit in, and it's all self-contained. And the casting, it really speaks to the purpose of the two separate teams that are on the island in Jurassic Park 2, which
Absolutely,
is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good example.
But yeah, so those ones immediately sprung to mind. I did have another example for cars that don't fit, and it's totally evacuated my mind. So if it pops up again, I'll let you know.
Yeah, fair enough. Another one I really like is the first Bourne film. Is it Bourne Identity? Is the first one? I think it's Bourne Identity. Is the car casting for the car chase? I mean, it's really the car is the woman he meets, kind of. It's her car, but like I love the way that the chase that they filmed there. It's like it's really good. It's actually quite a good modern car chase, and I think the casting him in like the beat up kind of worn out little red Mini, it almost makes like his character more vulnerable. Like it's a way of like, because he's already demonstrated that he's like quite a competent fighter, hand to hand and stuff like that. But like putting him in like this really small kind of like little car and making him, having to run away, does kind of, it almost gives us like an artificial kind of like fragility and weakness to his character.
Yeah, I'll give you that, because in the film he is a machine.
Yeah, totally.
And it certainly does. It shows a much more, admittedly, as you say, artificial but fragile side to him. It's almost at a disadvantage more so.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, there's quite a few examples of films where they deliberately put their their hero at a disadvantage through giving them kind of like a weird or more kind of like guff vehicle. There's that one of the Bonds has him in a 2CV, and there was another one where it was maybe like a Fiat or something like that.
Yep, there was the Transporter one where he ended up. I want to say it was like a Fiat 500. No, it wasn't. It was like a Peugeot, but like an 80s obscure Peugeot that I have no chance of knowing the name of. And it was white, and it was like he stole it from a farm essentially. And you see it driving down the road, and there's like steam coming out of it, and all the doors are hanging off and everything. It's just like an absolute shit heap. But it does the same, but it's almost like that shows the character overcoming the hardship of it. It kind of like, because he beats the odds, even though he's got that shit car. So it's like, I don't know if it's the same idea, but more or less.
Yeah, no, it totally is. It totally is. So yeah, that's quite a comprehensive. Well, not super comprehensive, but like a kind of sporadic and meandering list of some cars in movies and TV.
Yeah, like before we get beaten to death in the comments section, we are aware there's more films than what we discussed, and also that there is more cars in films than what has been discussed. So
we just talked about some we could actually remember right now. There's more we didn't cover.
Yeah.
But in the interests of the podcast not being like 4 hours long and us just listing films that we remember. Although we didn't talk about the original Italian Job, which is absolutely fantastic. Like I just love that. Yeah. I really enjoy the film, but I really, really like the mini escape scene kind of chase at the end. That's fantastic.
Yes, everything in that film is masterpiece. We've kind of not done the big Steve McQueen car chase film, and the name of it is escaping me right now.
Bullet,
that's the one. We didn't do that. And I know that you're not particularly keen on Bullet, but I absolutely
Yeah, it's
love
very meh for me.
the film itself is absolutely meh, but the car chase is just incredible.
I'm not going to say it's not good. I don't. I think I enjoy other ones more. It's probably the
Yeah.
easiest way of putting it. Like, I mean, I do love the Blues Brothers chase at the end. That's so silly and ridiculous. When I was younger, I used to love any car chase that had like a huge car count of cars destroyed.
Yeah, no, I'll give you that. Like anything that fills a scrapyard is entertaining to watch. And I'll give you that on Bullet's car chase as well. Like it's not the most exciting one to watch, but I love the attitude of it. The fact that they were like, they're not going to let us close the road, so we're just got to do it in live traffic. I was just like, oh, phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, they did the same thing in the French Connection as well.
Did they?
Really, like, it wasn't so much a car chase. It was just he drove his car kind of like to chase a train, I think it was, under an underpass, and they couldn't get the permit for it, so they just filmed it, him doing it in live kind of people and stuff. There might have been a couple of stunt drivers kicking about for like some effect, but yeah, no one really knew that it was going on,
Fair enough. Oh,
which is absolutely wild.
there's one that's just popped into my head, and forgive me because this has got to be like a half shut knife. I can't remember the name of the film, but it was a Tom Hardy film, and it's basically an hour and a half of him driving down the M6 and talking on
Lock,
his phone.
lock.
Lock, and
Yeah,
his entire life falls apart during this journey.
I actually know that film. I really like that film.
It's an absolute masterpiece, and it's so simplistic. Like there's literally one actor, well, two in the context of this podcast. There's the actor, and then there's also his car, which is a Range Rover, I want to say. And
BMW X5, I'm pretty sure.
is it?
Think so,
Ooh,
aye.
we'll have to look this one up then. But it fits the character so well. Like that sort of mid-level executive driving home from work and his life's just starting to fall apart through a series of phone calls, and you see his reactions to it and how it's really quite visceral. And the car just fits it really well.
I think it fits who he starts the night as well.
Yes.
Because he's a site engineer. He's like he's a civil basically. He's concerned. I actually really enjoy how much that film gets to say the word concrete. It's just absolutely banging on about his concrete pour. Personally, I've never been that passionate about a concrete pour as him.
Fair play, man. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm
No,
pretty sure it's a BMW X5 that he's like just kind of in, and that's like very much a kind of site manager vibed car.
oh yeah. And it just fits so well. That just popped into my head there, and I was like, we have to pay a little nod to that because it just does such a nice job. It might not seem it, but the films do very much play into the stereotypes of the cars as well.
But yeah, they absolutely do. I mean, some films lean on stereotypes, but I think you brought up a really good one when you talked about Jurassic Park. Like before Jurassic Park, that was a Jeep Wrangler, you know.
Yeah.
But now when people see it, they do often think, oh, that's like, that's the Jeep from Jurassic Park. It doesn't help that people often put the livery on it, but
No. But like when you see a car and you're like, you know what? I could outrun a T-Rex in that car. It lends it a certain air of coolness, you know?
Do you know what? You're absolutely right. How many cars can say that they can outrun a T-Rex? Actually been proven. We have footage of it happening.
Yeah. Because like I know a T-Rex doesn't run as fast as most cars will go. Like a T-Rex isn't running as fast as a cheetah, but still, like you can have your Ferrari F40, but it's not the car that outran a T-Rex. You know, it's faster than the car that did, but it didn't do it. So,
What happens if you have to outrun that T-Rex on a bit of mud?
ooh, yeah. I mean, as recent videos in the UK have shown, a moderately damp road in the UK can be a hassle for a Ferrari F40.
Oh, was that recent? I thought that was an old video.
No, man, that happened recently. Have you seen the full video where there's a guy following him with a dash cam?
I saw the video from the dash cam point of view.
And it's literally like the guy in front of him basically downshifts, plants it, and then forgets that his car's from the 80s. So turbos don't work immediately. There's a little bit of spool, and then it goes from like 30 brake horsepower to all 480 brake horsepower, and then just sends him off the road. It's class. I love watching it because I can actually see the moment where A, the turbos spool up, and B, the guy shits himself. It's just fantastic to watch. But yeah.
You've got to remember, you've got to be on your guard sometimes.
You do, man. I mean, big power in rear-wheel drive is not fun to drive. You know, it's tiring to drive. It's not particularly good fun all the time, though. So, do you reckon the stereotypes are deserved, like true or changing, or any that are totally undeserved? What do you reckon?
Well, I think when you brought up that VW buses are going from like hippie to hipster, you know, like, and being campers and stuff, I think that's a really good example of a stereotype changing over time.
Yeah, I'll give you that because really, like, I don't get the hype or the want around a VW bus. To me, they're very mediocre at best and just a bit shit at worst.
Yeah, I don't want them.
No, I don't either. But I mean, I cannot help but say there is a very definite demand from a certain section of society for them, and they are usually the people that have fake spectacles on.
Yeah. So would you say that that is a stereotype that is deserved? Does the VW bus deserve to be hipster? Do they deserve each other?
I think it does, yeah. Because I don't see anybody else lining up to buy them. You know, I think it's deserved. I think it was deserved in both cases. You know, because I like it was very much the hippie bus, and then that kind of died off, and then it became the hipster thing where basically everyone wanted to turn them into camper vans, and then vans exploded in price because of that as well. So
Yeah.
I can see it being it's deserved in both cases, but it's also changing. I think for me a better example of that's like Subaru and Evo owners. So Subaru owners in particular were always kind of yobs.
Aye.
Like there's the dickhead in his Subaru, that type of thing, right? And because I was on quite a lot of the forums for these as well, it was quite a common complaint where like there'd be a guy in an Impreza, WRX, STI, whatever, and he pulls into like parent and child parking at the supermarket, and like some Karen in her fucking beige heap of shit is like, "You shouldn't be parking there. These are for parents and children." And she's just going off the car, and she's like, "Clearly that man doesn't have children. Clearly it's just a yob." And the guy's like getting out the car while being called a cunt and opening the back door to let his daughter out.
Aye. Yeah. I mean, I think that really does show you shouldn't make assumptions about people based on the car they drive, which is a point against the car, like car stereotypes. Like car stereotypes might exist, but should they?
Yeah, that's a very good point because like that, like if that was me and somebody was shouting and at me like that and using all sorts of obscenities in front of my stepchild or future child, I would fill them in. Like I'd be like, no, you don't talk like that in front of my child. Like keep your trap shut unless there's something nice coming out of it. It's not needed.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think this is something that affects Joe Public more than it does car enthusiasts. Because on the whole, generally, I think if it's an enthusiast type car, enthusiasts don't judge as much.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have anything that's kind of loud or looks a bit leery and is fast, Joe Public immediately says, boy racer, yobs, dickheads. But that couldn't be further from the truth in a lot of cases, excluding the Fiesta ST.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I totally know what you mean. Some people with loud exhausts may appear to be yobs, but they are looking for an outlet. They need
Yeah.
they need an outlet for frustration.
So, yeah, I mean, are they changing? Definitely. Like that's two that are definitely changing. Even like the JDM cars, like I don't really think they're all drifters and street racers and whatever Joe Public always thought they were, because that's mostly where the stereotypes come from. Now, I would say they're mostly going to collectors. The good
Exactly
example.
what I was thinking. Yeah, I think when I think of like JDM stuff, I think, oh, that's like, that's collector money now.
Yeah, which is actually quite interesting because the thing that really drove that was the pricing. So, like the spike in used car prices affected everything, even down to like 90s age levels.
Yeah.
As things got more rare, it's the economics of buying that car that have actually changed the stereotype a little bit, or for me anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point. And I agree. I think that what was once kind of accessible Japanese rot that people bought and like did what they wanted with it are now kind of so valued that they're probably being bought and restored and squirreled away.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think for a concluding thought, stereotypes are definitely changing, and I think they kind of have to, as the usage profile and the ownership profile kind of changes for what the car is.
Yeah, but should car stereotypes exist? I mean, am I thinking in a really abstract utopian world where no one judges each other and everyone's friends and we all have a really nice time, which I know doesn't exist? Like, I know in my head that you shouldn't make generalizations at all. Like, it's generally bad.
Yeah, I'll give you
But,
that.
oh God, sometimes like I do find myself when I'm driving make like quite snap decisions about people and about how I predict that they will drive based on the car that they're in. Like there's like even today when I was driving I was behind it was a small Hyundai i10, I think. And if you're behind an i10, what do you expect it to do?
Be really slow, get in my way, and annoy me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they were very, very slow. They had a very, very unusual road positioning. I've never seen someone so far over to the left on the road. Really,
But
truly.
do you know what? I absolutely love stereotypes for one thing though, because what you just described and what you said and then what I described off the back of that is exactly what most people would assume. But then you sometimes when the planets align, you get a lunatic driving a Hyundai i10, and then you're like, "Holy fuck, that i10's actually moving!" And it's like, this guy's keeping a respectable rate of knots around these corners, and like, holy fuck, he's driving quite aggressively for what I imagine an i10 would do. And there's something really quite entertaining and actually quite satisfying about that. Just seeing someone having fun in something that's just totally left field.
I totally agree. Watching someone rag out like quite a slow car is good, is fun and is funny.
Yeah, no, that's quite cool. Like, so do you think any of the stereotypes are true or kind of true?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're always deserved, but I think that some, some car stereotypes do exist for a reason, for sure. It's like, you would give, personally, I would give like a little bit extra space to a car that I clearly knew was an Uber or a minicab or a taxi or something like that.
Yeah,
Because like taxi drivers, I'm sure many of them are great drivers, but there's loads of them and they do occasionally do insane things. Like
yeah,
on the road, occasionally some maneuvers that, okay, maybe they've pulled that maneuver loads of times before, but I wasn't expecting it. I've not been there every time.
yeah. I think that comes from like a sense of entitlement, though.
I think so. Yeah, I think you probably do feel like a sense of kind of entitlement when you spend so much time on the road.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, what do you think then of this subject that we've been on? Do you think that the stereotypes have a place, or do you think we need to be a little bit less judgmental? And I think this is kind of that's kind of the peak here, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think we need to be maybe less quick to judge. I need to be less quick to judge, I think. But I think the fact that car stereotypes do exist is also kind of important to all of the media and culture, that we talked about a little bit earlier. They need to exist for them to have a kind of,
Like a meaning.
yeah, like a vibe and aura, like a personality. Like the reason why you would pick an E4A6 or something for, the Wheelman movie, like because it's got a kind of a stereotype associated with it in a way.
Yeah, that's fair. That's remarkably on point, actually. I find it very difficult to disagree with that. In that certain types of cars have a certain meaning, and without a stereotype, the meaning wouldn't exist.
Yeah, sometimes there needs to be that kind of like cultural shorthand. Like I'm not really kind of like keen on saying "woo, yay, stereotypes" because like loads of stereotypes are negative and super harmful.
Hmm.
But uh, you know, when it's about a kind of the casting of a car, I mean, it isn't the most kind of like harmful thing in the world, is it?
No, definitely not. No, I think there's. I think in for that question, there's quite a lot that are deserved. There's quite a lot that have a half truth at least attached to them, and I think pretty much given enough time or enough time, all of them will change.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. That's one of the things is they do absolutely shift with time.
But one thing I have to do, I have to say, sorry, is that as an enthusiast, I don't find that I necessarily associate an enthusiast's car with a stereotype. It's more the Joe public, the people that don't have any interest in cars. Um, it's more them that I would associate with it.
Do you think that's because we kind of feel part of that group, so we kind of understand it, whereas we don't really understand like the public apathy to cars, so it makes it a little bit easier to like kind of other them and make stereotypes up about them.
In short, yes. It's a lot easier for me to overlook a potential stereotype because I am in the culture and I'm immersed in it and I actively interact with it.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I've never really thought too much about that, but that's quite interesting.
And I think part of the reason as well is more so because we interact with shows, because this is where you get to see a car, and usually the owner of said car will be floating not far away from you and will, like, if he sees you paying any attention to something, he'll generally try to talk to you about it because that's the thing. That's interacting in the scene. That's interacting with the culture. It's meeting people, which is at its basis form what it is. And you see that there's a lot of different people that own a lot of different types of cars.
Yeah, definitely.
And some of them absolutely fit, but some of them don't. And I think that softens your outlook towards the stereotypes. Don't get me wrong, I think Fiesta ST drivers are the automotive form of AIDS, and nothing will ever change my mind on that.
We need to buy a Focus ST or
If
a
you
Fiesta ST.
if you buy me a Fiesta ST, I will set fire to it.
I knew that's what you were gonna say.
Like, it's not happening. But no, so it is what it is. But certainly that outlook and that interaction with people lessens or it dampens the application of stereotypes. But then at the same time, I know that that carries across and isn't necessarily true for Joe Blogs, but it doesn't stop me applying a stereotype to Joe Public driving down the road when I come across, like what you said, a Hyundai i10. So
I fully understand. I completely get it.
my thought on this is very elitist, and it's, I think people who are in the culture might necessarily fit a stereotype, but I don't really think they deserve it. Whereas Joe Public, who, when you see like a Hyundai i10 and you see it at a junction with an old guy that's peering over the dashboard trying to see, and you're like, he's definitely going to pull out on me and try and kill me. He deserves the reputation of
Danger.
He's not going to be a good driver. He's going to be a hazard, because I think it kind of fits a self-preservation thing, you know.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like self-preservation on the road.
It does. Well, that's my thoughts on the matter anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely fair. Yeah, we really have talked quite relatively introspectively about car stereotypes. It started off as, again, once again, obviously, it started off as us trying to answer a question and then really not answering that and answering something slightly different at the end.
Yeah, but I feel we've came closer to answering this question than we have
I agree.
every other
We
question.
have got closer.
So, Thomas, it's personal growth.
It is. I completely agree. I'm going to take it as a win. And so we're going to wrap up with closing thoughts of car stereotypes can sometimes be bad, and you shouldn't judge before you know someone. But also, some car stereotypes can be useful on the road to maybe help you anticipate potential hazards.
Yeah. They're not fair, but they have their uses.
Yeah. Okay. That's it's a strange conclusion we've come to about what our cars say about us. They say whether we're a potential hazard on the road. So thanks you for listening to Auto Arcadia. If you enjoyed this, please give us a like or a subscribe. Potentially, a nice wee 5-star rating wouldn't go amiss. Thanks very much for listening. I've been Thomas Hope, and with me,
I've been Colin Wood.